What's up, everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of Bookworm's Book Corner, where we talk all things books. I am your host, Elizabeth Berg, and today, as promised, we're going with something that will either bring a big smile to your face, like it did for mine, or bring you to tears, which it also did for me, or make you irritable, which yeah, it depends. So make sure you get your drink ready, get comfy, and let's start talking. So, in my last video, my last review, I promised you that we will be talking about a book that will bring a smile to your face. Now, when I think of books that bring a smile to my face, it's tricky because I'm a very emotional reader, so I smile at all sorts of things and it's very perspective. It's about your perspective on things. So, for today's book, we're going to be talking about The Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. Look at that big boy. It is the first of a trilogy. The second one came out recently, and I actually have it here next to me. I haven't read it yet, so we're not doing a review on this. It's called Things We Hide from the Light. And then there's one more coming out, I believe at the end of this year or sometime this year, I'm fairly certain. It is part of what they call the Knockemout trilogy, and it all takes place in the same Virginia small town. So let's do a little logistics about the book before we actually go into what this book is about. So this book, I heard about this from Book Talk. It is a big boy, as you can see, minus my phone that I, for some reason, put in my book. I was wondering where that went. There is 545 pages in this book. Now, if you add the extra bonus epilogue, there's 552. So it is not a small book. It took me, I don't want to say a day to read this, but it was one of those moments because I checked my Goodreads as just a precaution just to make sure that I'm being as accurate as possible. Um, I did read this in a day. I started it at some point in time in the mid-afternoon and I stayed up all night reading it. So um it took me about a day. Let's just be honest. It'll probably take a couple days to read if you are really trying to take your time. Um if you notice the pages, they're a nice color, so it's not like that blinding white type deal that can be a little uncomfortable for people. And the pages have a nice feel to them. Another thing I like, and I don't know if anyone else notices this, but when you look at a book, especially if it's thick, um, it didn't break the binding. Like the binding didn't break the way like some of my other books have. So that was a nice little treat for me. So the only thing I would say is if you get it anywhere else, I don't like the sticker, but it's fine. Lucy Score has written other books. I've read a couple of her other books. We'll talk about them eventually, in another time. She's an interesting writer because her books are about older adults. And I say older in the sense of I am 24, turning 25. So the characters are kind of like in their 30s, maybe in their 40s. Um, maybe in their 20s if you're going in order, but she deals with adult romance. This is not a book for um 18-year-olds. I'd go with 22 and up. It is a spicy novel, but not in the sense of this isn't about the spice. Okay, so if you remember, and if you need to have a review of what the spice levels are, take a look back on my Killer Vacation episode, and you'll get to see and review what those are. This book is a romance novel, but it's not all about the spice. Okay, so granted, if you go on Book Talk, popular Book Talk, this is one of the popular books. This was one of the popular books amongst, with the Colleen Hoovers and all that stuff and a bag of chips, especially last year. Um, But it's one of those things where, like, if you go on, like, a spicy book talk, it is on there because of how much spice is in it, but the book isn't around the spice. It just it the spice gets put into it like a normal type of deal. So to me, it just felt natural. Let's talk about the tropes of this novel. So another thing about especially romance novels is you have a bunch of different tropes. Um, there's a few tropes that I'm not a fan of, and if we're interested in maybe like a Q&A video, I'm more than happy to make one. But for this episode, what we're dealing with is a small town romance trope and like definitely a grumpy sunshine. You know, you have a grumpy most of the time it's usually a grumpy guy and then you have like a sunshiny girl. So that is definitely what this book has. And it does have like a HEA or a happily ever after. So if that is something you are looking for, I do think you'll find it in this book. So now that we've talked about some of the logistics of, the outside and some of the tropes that are in it, let me read the back. So it says, Knox Morgan doesn't tolerate drama, especially in the form of a stranded runaway bride. Like, can we just take a second? Like, that is like when you start a video or like if you start a book, okay, and that is the first thing that comes to you, like, eh? Like, excuse me, it's just you know you're in for a treat. You can just tell you're in for a good time. Naomi Witt is on the run, not just from her fiance and a church full of well wishers, but from her entire life. Although, if you ask her, Naomi's riding to the rescue of her estranged hot mess twin, Tina, to Knockemout, a rough around the edges town where disputes are settled the old fashioned way, with fists, and beer, usually in that order. Too bad for Naomi, her evil twin hasn't changed at all, and after helping herself to Naomi's car and her cash, Tina leaves behind something unexpected. A niece Naomi didn't know she even had. Now she's the guardian to an 11-year-old going on 30 with no car, no money, and no plan. There's a reason this bearded bad boy barber doesn't get involved with high maintenance women, especially not a type A romantic one. But since Naomi's life imploded right in front of him, the least Knox can do is help her out in a jam. And as soon as she stops getting into new trouble, he can leave her alone and get back to his solitary life. Or at least that's the plan. So, as you can hear in the back, obviously, like one of my favorite reviews on Goodreads described it as like a telenovela. This is very dramatic, okay? For 500 something pages, this has a lot of drama in it, and like it's one of those things where I kept having to keep reading and reading to like, see what happens next. Were there parts where I was like, "Ugh," like I was so upset? Yes. But I mean, did I like enjoy the ending? Duh. I mean, I wouldn't be saying, oh, look at that. But let's get back to some of the things I want you guys to know about. So, one thing I like about this book, it is a dueling POV, so you do get to hear, from the sides of Knox as well as Naomi. So I do enjoy that. I like a good POV, especially when you don't know what the guy's thinking, and then there it is. That makes me happy. And as I said, we do have some spice in this book. I'm not gonna give it a 3, but I'm also not gonna I'll give it, like, a 3.5, okay? I like the spice. It made me really giddy. I enjoyed it. It made me happy. I really enjoyed, the scenes that were in the book, and did I laugh at some of them? Yes. Did Zach, my fiance, look at me funny? Yes. But that's okay. But it definitely has enough spice where I'm like, it's definitely not like a YA type novel. So I wouldn't recommend it for people like 18. I'd wait till like you're in your 20s to read this book because of the content that is in it. Another thing that I like about this book is that it talks about growing up. So, as you heard, Naomi now has to deal and take care of her 11-year-old niece that she didn't even know she had. And something that's important about that is you're watching her change and grow as a person. So, Um, this book really does focus on like learning who she is as a person and growing as a person. Um, if you're not really another trope that's kind of in there is fake dating. If you're not into the fake dating tropes, I mean, it's not really a guaranteed like type deal. It's not like a hit or miss, a make or break type deal. Um, something that it just they have this absolute chemistry. Like how the book starts, Naomi goes into a coffee shop to get a cup of coffee. And the coffee guy is like, get out. Because her twin sister's mugshot is on the wall. And so they think she's her. And so literally Knox comes in like within like 2 pages, is like, "Get out!" And he's screaming at her, and she's like, "Calm down, Leaf Erikson." And actually, let me tell you something. If you did not think about it this way, which I didn't think about it until after I like looked it up, like the author literally describes him to look like this, whoops, as I almost drop, like a Norse Viking. She literally calls him a Viking, ladies and gentlemen. So, all you get is this picture of this big old dude who's like her, who's like, "Ugh," and he's like screaming at her. And she's just like, hold up, let me get my coffee. This does not even deal with you. And it's just their chemistry and their like actions within themselves. It just makes my heart just flutter. A lot of comments that book read like Goodreads and other book lovers comment about is they don't like how Lucy Score writes some of her characters, especially with like the intimate scenes and the spicy scenes. My philosophy is, you know, love can make you dumb. Love can make you do silly things. A lot of people don't like how these characters act like they're a lot younger than they are, like stupid teenagers. And that's like one of the quotes from one of the um Goodreads descriptions. And the thing is though, how I see it is love can make you do silly things. And so when you're in love with somebody and you're trying to like do things and get things done. It just, to me, I don't think it as outlandish the way they act in the book, only because I also acknowledge that, when you're head over heels for somebody, like, this is realistic in the sense of, when you're in love with somebody, and you fall in love madly in love with them and you have all these feelings for them, you're going to do some dumb things. So, I mean, it just depends. Some people found it annoying. I didn't really find it annoying only because I'm a sucker for, romance and um just mushy gushy like ee. This book definitely I found it really funny. Let me read you one of my favorite quotes from the beginning so it's spoiler free. Um, let's see here. So after he yells at her and he's like, "Where?" and stuff like that. Um, Tina had gone beach blonde at some point in the past decade plus, making our otherwise subtle differences even more obvious. "I left my contacts at home," he said. "Next to your manners," I quipped. The caffeine was hitting my bloodstream, making me unusually feisty. He didn't respond with anything other than a heated glare. I sighed, "Get out of the way, Leave Erikson. The name is Knox, and why are you here?" What the hell of a name is that? Is that the Hard Knocks life? Does he tell a lot of Knox jokes? Is this short for something like Knoxwell or Knoxathin? And like, just I like puns. I like silly things. Like I have a poor sense of humor. I'm not the first one to deny that, and I know most people who get to know me know that I have a weird sense of humor. So I found this book funny. There were some parts where I did like cry, and it's not because it was overly emotional per se. I got frustrated, but I mean that comes back to like the whole soap opera telenovela thing. I got so invested in this book that I not only had to keep reading it, but I also needed to find out what happens next. And I was so upset when the silly decisions that were made were done. And I was like, "Oof." Another thing that I like, and this has my whole heart, Knox calls her Daisy. It's in the first chapter, so it's not a spoiler. He calls her Daisy because she ran away from her wedding and she has daisy flower crown, like daisies in her hair. So it just he calls her Daisy or Days, and I'm just like, yee! It makes me happy. But I will say, if you like cliche things, this one is what made Zach laugh. So, for example, the bar in the book is called the Honky Tonk. Take that with what you will. There's like, he has an adorable dog. Um, the feistiness between the two of them and like the fake dating trope and like falling in love with each other, and Whaley, who is the daughter who she becomes guardian of, like her attitude and just her being an overall like preteen. It just watching them grow as people was also just so satisfying because I liked it was just realistic to me. Like I sometimes you just need that like satisfaction. And I really enjoyed it. So, do I recommend Things We Never Got Over? Yes. I gave it a 4 when I first read it, but the more I thought about it, it was more like a 4.5. So, I bumped my Goodreads score up to 5. Because, I really did enjoy this book. I'm not unhappy that I read it. I really did like it, and I was obsessed with it since then. So, I would read it again. I'm probably going to read it again because I want to make sure that I am prepared for things we hide from the light. So, I'll put a link down below so you can find your own copy of Things We Never Got Over. I totally recommend reading this book. Um, Let me know what you guys think. If you have a book recommendation, please let me know. I'm more than happy to look into them. Currently reading a couple different books as we speak. But that doesn't mean that I'm not ever going to take recommendations, because let me tell you something, I literally just bought this one book. I bought a bunch of books actually, and the books that I just already had, like I had to stop because and that's the interesting thing for a person that actually asked this. I'm, like I said, a mood reader. So when I read books, if something just feels off and I can't get back into it, then I might take a quick pause. I'm reading an Emily McIntyre book called, I believe it's called Wretched, and it's part of like the villain series. So the main characters are like the villains, and they're retellings of like the Disney fairy tales, but it's not Disney. So like the first one was called Hooked, the next one was called Scarred. So Hooked was about like Peter Pan and Captain Hook, but it wasn't they have we'll do a video for another day. But like for example, I'm reading the third one, but I've never been a really big Wizard of Oz fan, so I'm kind of really struggling with that. So I put that to the side and I started something else. But that doesn't mean that it won't come back. So if you have any recommendations, let me know. I'll be happy to look into them. You never know. It might be already on my to be read list, or I might have already read it. If you're interested in following my Goodreads account, you can also do that. So that way you can also keep track of what this silly possum is reading. So make sure you like and subscribe. Thank you for coming to see us tonight. And next time, we'll be talking about a new book. Till then, everybody, have a good night. Bye.